Daddy, why'd they build all those pyramids? April 11, 2189 AD, Chapter 82. Jennifer had finished her work at the Smithsonian a week earlier. It had been decimated by fire and hail and was now beyond repair. Interestingly, the Capitol dome still remained perfectly intact, untouched by the destruction and chaos around it. On her journey by boat and rail back to the New Jerusalem, she swung by Paris, France. She wandered around the main center of the city and wound up in the Louvre. The building itself was more a pile of rubble than a museum now, but many of the walls were still standing and many of the great masterworks still hung there in pristine condition. She made her way to the world's most famous painting and stood in both shock and awe as she stared at it. It hung on the wall untouched and in perfect condition. The woman with the most unique smile in all the world was staring directly back at her. She sat on a huge overturned Greek statue and stared at the Mona Lisa for a long while. She soon struck up a conversation with herself, something Jennifer was very used to doing since parting with McGrant, who she still loved. Her recent conquest, a boy on the same floor as she in the New Jerusalem, had moved on to a tall, skinny blonde. After the Alexander Paul debate, her boyfriend had packed his few belongings, something which very few had much of, and moved to the sumptuous environment of the New Eden with the blonde. "I don't want to live with child murderers," he told her when he left, but Jennifer knew that if everyone did not have a voice, a choice, the kingdom of the New Eden would not survive. "But I am a survivor, and I will survive," she said aloud. "This New Jerusalem Christ must be correct. Even though the New Eden is a much nicer place, we all must be able to choose. Alexander and then Luke both said some would not have a choice. That's just not right. Women got the right to vote first in America. That's why it survived." She thought on that for a moment, picturing the United States Capitol building standing tall against the D.C. rubble. Then she pictured the Smithsonian and her beloved pyramids. The pyramids were all still standing, but the Smithsonian Museum and all her hand-built exhibits were piles of junk. Tears now ran freely down both her cheeks. A chipmunk suddenly appeared on the fallen statue next to hers and eyed her warily. She slowly reached in her pocket, pulled out a blue M&M, and threw it in front of the chipmunk. He stared at the M&M in front of him. He paused briefly, then popped it in his mouth. "You're chewing like there's no tomorrow," she said. He kept on chewing, seeming to savor the treat. "Isn't that right?" she said to her new friend. She pulled out another M&M, a red one, and threw it in front of him. He was still working on the blue one. M&Ms were now considered a extreme delicacy in the chaotic world. They were more valuable than gold. She had bought several bags for her trip at a steep price, but she loved M&Ms and was happy she had them. "I said, isn't that right?" she said to her friend. He seemed to nod his head in agreement, but she thought he probably was just moving his head as part of his chewing process. Nevertheless, she continued. "We must have a choice, mustn't we, Alvin?" she said, naming him after the most famous chipmunk in world history. She threw another M&M and peanut at him, this time a yellow one. The red and the yellow M&Ms now lay before him as he continued to work over the blue one. The three primary colors, she realized: red, blue, yellow. Jennifer had begun college as an art major, but soon morphed into archaeology. "Which one will you choose, Alvin?" she asked. "Red or yellow?" She stared at her new friend. "I say yellow because it's brighter." She then stared out over the rubble of the Louvre grounds. The glass pyramid remained intact. She could not even see a crack anywhere in the glass. She looked west and could see the sun low in the sky, framed by the two pillars of the Arc de Triomphe, its high arch now missing. She looked back at Alvin. Only the yellow M&M lay in front of him now. "Wrong again. Story of my life. Yes, I was allowed choices, but made all of 'em wrong, every one," she said as she threw her friend another M&M, a green one. She then stared over at the other paintings nearby. She saw another of Da Vinci's masterpieces, Madonna of the Rocks. She remembered the role it played in the long-forgotten book, The Da Vinci Code. She still loved that movie and watched it from time to time. I like it because it unearthed a secret, just like I did in Death Valley, Alvin, she said. You know, your cousins were there. Alvin seemed to shake his head as he worked on the green M&M. No, I guess it was too hot for them in the valley. Well, they watched me from Telescope Peak. She laughed at her own irony. Here, I'll fix you. She dug out another yellow M&M and threw it at him. Alvin now had two yellow M&Ms in front of him. Now you'll have to eat the yellow one, Al. No discrimination here. But Alvin quit chewing and watched her intently. Finally, after a couple of minutes, she dug into her pocket and pulled out a brown one. Here, you little smarty, she said, throwing it in front of him. It landed by the two yellow ones. He quickly picked up the brown one, popped it in his mouth, and resumed his chewing. You win, Al. She threw up her hands in defeat, and Alvin ran down the back of the fallen statue for cover. Sorry, Al, she said as she looked back, first at Madonna of the Rocks, then at the Mona Lisa. She turned back to see if Alvin had returned, but something made her look back at the Mona Lisa. That smile. You know, I've seen that smile somewhere before, Alvin, she said. Alvin had not returned. She scoured her mind. Suddenly she said, I got it, Al, I got it. Eve. Eve was introduced at the debate when she smiled. It was that smile. Jennifer pointed to the Mona Lisa. She slapped her hand on the marble statue she was seated on. Leonardo, you fool us all. You painted little Eve with that sheepish smile just after she ate the apple. I got it. Little Jennifer, figured it out. I'm going to try and meet Leonardo, Al, she said. I think he's in the New Jerusalem. Of course he is. Her eyes turned from the Mona Lisa, or Eve, back to the intact pyramid. Framed by the sun was little Alvin with bulging cheeks, chewing away. There were no more M&Ms left on the marble statue.